Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. I watched a really interesting documentary movie the other night called The Thread, and it's all about the interplay between modern journalism and social media coverage of major events and issues. It focuses on, in particular, on the Boston Marathon bombings of a couple of years ago and the way in which social media drove that coverage. It's very, very interesting stuff to watch for a couple of reasons. First of all, it really does show the difference between proper journalistic ethics as opposed to people just posting anything on social media without thinking it through first, without checking, without making sure that they've got their facts right, or that thinking through the ramifications of what they're doing. Basically, social media can be, what it usually is, just a bit of a free-for-all. And so it really does highlight why journalism is still so fundamentally important and why you need those ethics in play. What's problematic, though, of course, is that social media really drove the way that story was covered, because the media outlets, it was very clear, they felt that they had to just repost a lot of those comments and videos and everything else that was being posted, including speculation about who the offenders were, who the actual criminals were, the terrorists in this particular case. The other aspect of this that's intriguing, very intriguing, is because as a result of this social media coverage, and what happens is some very poor and very imprudent decisions that were made, effectively a whole ton of people on social media all of a sudden become terrorist hunters, and they pin down a person they think is a suspect who is not a suspect at all. I won't tell you much more about the situation. You should watch the movie for yourself, but it's a very tragic situation, but which could have had a far more horrific and devastating outcome if events hadn't played out the way they did. So initially this person is blamed wrongly for being a terrorist, and this could have easily resulted in a mob execution, effectively, of someone who was totally innocent. Now, and that's really dangerous. And what's even more, I guess, problematic about this whole incident is when we get to the end of this documentary, The Thread, the people who were really involved and who bear the weight of responsibility for driving a lot of this social media hype and misinformation, they really don't seem to want to take responsibility for their actions, or they just don't seem to be that sort of cognizant of how their actions were so detrimental and perhaps what they could do better next time. It just seemed they just didn't quite seem to get what the problem was here. The fact that they just used social media in such an arbitrary way without thinking, and they allowed the emotion and the mob mentality of the situation to take over. And like I said, this becomes even more problematic by the fact that the mainstream media simply joined in and used that social media speculation and that social media content was just being chucked up. They used it themselves to drive the way they crafted stories, and of course that's extremely problematic, because you want to be able to go to the mainstream media in a situation like that and know that you can rely on their coverage. But the problem is, if they are using shonky source material, i.e. social media, then we can't rely on that coverage anymore, and that obviously is really problematic. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.